Chapter 17. The Avenging. In the great temple, the faithful of Set were gathered to hear the exhortation of their master. Hundreds of candles, nursed by loving hands, threw a dim radiance over the chamber and reflected the eager faces of the congregation. The commingling of young voices, flutes, and brasses made solemn music that reverberated through the cavernous hall and lent an air of sanctity, vastly pleasing to the worshippers of Set. All became silent as Thulsa Doom, resplendent in his reptilian armor, mounted the die and faced his followers. His eyes were dark and filled with sorcery, but there was no humanity in them. He fixed his gaze beyond the uplifted faces massed before him, as if he saw some vision of a future that he alone could see, and intoned, "The day of doom is here. The purging is at last at hand. All who stand against us in high places, all who have lied to you and tried to turn you from me, parents, teachers, judges, all shall depart in a night of blood and fire. Then shall the earth be cleansed and ready to receive the God we worship." "Set!" moaned the listeners in ecstasy. The soft, smooth voice of Doom continued, "You, my children, are the pure water that will cleanse the world. You shall destroy all who stand against us. In your hands you hold the eternal light that burns in the eyes of Set." "Set!" chorused the audience as one. Doom lit a candle held by a kneeling priest. "This flame," he said, "shall burn away the darkness and light your way to paradise, if you but act when I do call on you." Not many miles from the citadel of Thulsa Doom, two horses trotted side by side. One bore the slight form of Princess Yasmina, clad in a silken robe from the saddlebags of Valeria. The other, a larger beast, carried a man dressed in the leathern armor and face-encasing helmet of a guard of Thulsa Doom. Above the pounding hoofbeats, had any been there to listen, the following words drifted like floating petals on a springtime breeze. "I loved him, and he tried to kill me. Why did he do that?" Conan, for it was he, shrugged. "I do not know. But so long as he lives, you are in danger, and my prayers for vengeance go unanswered. Doom must die." "I would that Subutai were here to aid you." "But he lies wounded in the shaman's care," said Conan. What help can I be on a mission such as this?" Yasmina's voice held a trace of her former petulance. "You must lead me to the Master, as you call him. None knows the ways of the Hollow Mountain so well as one who has lived there." The girl stared at the mountain that had been her home. Then she shivered. I still worship him, How can I help with his destruction? You must do it, for yourself and for Zamora. For my country? How so? Gently, Conan answered her. You have seen the sunrise. It drives away the terrors of the dark, and from its light foul things that love the darkness cower and hide. You must be the sunrise of Zamora. Yasmina nodded, but tears were in her eyes. Boldly, Yasmina rode to the gates of the mountain citadel. Boldly, Conan, in the guise of a guardsman, followed her. The sentries, subhuman beings as they were, knew nothing of the girl's abduction or their master's disavowal of her. The gates swung wide. Their mounts were stabled. Head held high, as befitted a priestess of Set, the princess walked up the broad avenue that led to the snake god's temple. She paused to dabble her fingers in the fragrant pool of the fountain at the foot of the wide stairs, and glanced briefly at the armed man who followed her. Then, with a composure that her beating heart belied, she and her attendant entered the sanctuary. In the dark recesses of the assembly room, their unnoticed figures moved on silent feet. A fugitive gleam of candlelight failed to betray the features of the princess, impassive and thoughtful. Behind the throng of worshippers, a score of brutish guards stood armed, but they did not mark the passage of the newcomers. Their attention was riveted on the cult leader, who, raising his arms, continued his exhortation. Know that, on the hard roads you now go forth to follow, weariness and heartache may be your lot. Hunger and loneliness may walk beside you, and loved ones become your enemies. Yet ever Set will walk before, and all who dare to stand against him you shall kill, until the whole wide world is his. Conan peered at Yasmina. Strange emotions, sorrow, love, and hate, chased one another across the face of the princess as she looked upon the man who, she thought, had loved her, but who would have spilled her life as casually as one throws away the dregs of a wine cup. Behind his helmet, Conan's eyes were agleam with calm ferocity. His was no longer a mission of revenge. To rid the earth of evil such as this was his destiny. All the days of his life, he thought, all the years of toil and suffering on the wheel of pain, all the months of training in the skills and wiles of a pit fighter, all the weary hours of wandering homeless across the uncaring land, were but preparation for this moment. On the die, Doom stood tall and silent, holding aloft a lighted candle. His face was upturned, as if to drink in the radiance of the flame. At his feet, one of the lesser priests resumed the ritual. To his hypnotic chant, the bodies of the worshippers swayed in rhythm, like half-coiled serpents weaving before a snake charmer. Blind your eyes, mystic serpent, intoned the priest. Kabil Sobul, Kabil Kabil, Kabil Hachim. Lift blind eyes to the moon. Whom call ye forth from the gulfs of night? What shadows falleth between the light and thee? Look into the eyes of such a one, O Father Set. Look and blast his soul to shriveled dust. Kill him, kill him, kill him, and all who love him kill. The rapt throng echoed, Kill! With stately tread, the chanting priest moved forward, bearing his lighted taper upraised above his head. Thulsa Doom, stranger from the east, sorcerer, high priest of Set, magnificent in his snake-like plates of polished mail, walked like a conqueror behind his acolyte. The faithful, row by row, fell in behind him, each intent on keeping his candle flame from flickering out. At the great portal, Doom paused and turned to bestow a final blessing on the cohorts he was about to fling into the world to do his evil bidding. As he raised a hand in benediction, a wave of consternation broke over the assemblage, as ripples from a falling pebble disturbed the surface of a pool. The spell of the devotions broke and faltered into silence. 100 pairs of eyes sought to pierce the shadows beside the open doors. As Doom looked around to see the cause of this disturbance, his brutish guards sprang into position between their master and his followers. Linking arms, they formed a living chain through which none could break, should any seek to do so, and awaited further orders. Conan strode forth into the candlelight with the slow-paced steps of a stalking panther, his father's sword in his right fist. He moved with a strange inevitability, like a tide sweeping in across the sand. The lead priest shrank away, unnerved by the Cimmerian's calm certitude that fate was guiding him. But Doom faced the barbarian squarely, with neither fear nor wonder in his cold, reptilian eyes. "Fear him not," said Doom. "He is but a mortal man. He cannot stem our tide of victory now. Guards, seize him." Before any of the slow-witted beastmen could react to the command, Conan held up the huge gem that he had stolen from the temple in Shadizar and repeated the words learned from the shaman. "Back, in the name of Set!" roared the Cimmerian. "Podozhitye nazad! Back and restrain the others." At the sight of the crimson eye of Set, the guards flinched, as from the flesh-tearing sting of a whip. They shrank back, but their line held. The worshippers could only watch in helpless amazement while the priests fled, screaming, down the broad staircase. Doom's lean, ascetic face remained devoid of expression, but the keen eyes searching Conan's face seemed to delve into his very soul. In the Cimmerian youth, the sorcerer saw strength. There was humanity too, and this he read as weakness. He smiled a thin, triumphant smile as he caught and held the barbarian's gaze with his strangely snake-like eyes. "You have come to me at last, Conan, as a son to a father," Doom began in his soft, hypnotic voice. "And rightly so, for who is your father, if not I? Who gave you the will to fight for life? Who taught you to endure? I and the wellspring whence flows your strength. If I were gone, your life would have no purpose. To the young Cimmerian, it seemed that the master's eyes expanded until they swallowed up the universe. He stood in a vast nothingness between the stars, seeing only those glowing, unwinking eyes. The seductive voice droned on. Without me, it would be as if you had never existed. My son, I am your friend and not your enemy. For a long moment, the dark eyes of doom, redolent with unearthly power, held Conan spellbound. Then Conan blinked his ensorcelled eyes and, summoning all the courage that was in him, tore his gaze free. In that instant, the Cimmerian flung up his left arm and suspended the Eye of Set an arm's length from the face of Thulsa Doom. Doom stared fixedly at the swinging jewel, then raised eyes wide with horror to meet Conan's vengeful glare. Before the frozen faces of the faithful, Doom's neck lengthened. His jaws elongated, his nose shrank and disappeared. His forehead retreated, his lips thinned and vanished. His dark eyes rounded into lidless orbs, and a purple tongue flicked out to test the air. Thulsa Doom bore the scaly serpent head of the ancient snake men, those timeless enemies of all mankind. As one, the congregation gasped. A shudder rippled through the silent throng. The princess, watching from the shadows, uttered a half-choked cry as tears of pity, mixed with horror and relief, coursed down her cheeks. Conan's sword sighed as it swept up in a great arc and clove the swaying snakehead from the human body. The body fell backward and lay, writhing like a trampled serpent, at the top of the wide steps. The severed head rolled slowly down the long flight of stairs and came to rest beside the fountain pool. Conan watched the gory object fall into the purple shadows of the dying day. Then, half to himself, he spoke. My father was the light of the day. Thulsa Doom, my knight. Yet in one thing he spoke true. What matters is not the steel within the blade, but the steel within the man. Rousing himself, Conan turned to face the guards who, obedient to his last command, still held the assemblage at bay. Raising the Eye of Set once more, he said, You, who were guards of Doom, go back to the caves from which he called you, and find another source of meat. Go! As the beastmen melted away, Conan looked at the former followers of Thulsa Doom. Some stared dejectedly about them, as if they knew not where they were or how they came to be in this strange place. Some sobbed for their dead leader. Others wept for their lost paradise, and their moans undulated like the restless singing of the surf. Conan masked his pity with rough words. I know you feel like orphans, but you all have homes to go to and a welcome waiting there. I have none. Yet I'm content, and you should be so too. For this night we are free. Go, and get ready for the journey." The barbarian stood at the threshold of the temple as Doom's children straggled down the long staircase. One by one, they tossed their lighted candles into the pool to flicker for a moment before hissing into nothingness. After the last departed, Conan wiped clean the sword that had so long consumed his thoughts and dreams. Seating himself beneath the portal, he watched the little flames wink out. With his father's sword across his knees, he remembered the past and wondered what the future years might bring. Yasmina, who, with the others, had extinguished her candle, the symbol of Doom's intended conquest of the world, remounted the deserted stairs. She crouched on the step beside Conan, seeking his strength, and yet too humbled to risk disturbing his reverie. So they passed the weary night. As pale dawn heralded the break of a new day, Conan perceived a strange change in the scene before him. The stone steps had become pitted and eroded, as by ages of exposure to the elements. The garden shrubs and flowers all were wilted, and the pavement around the half-drained pool was marked by muddy footprints. The ceremonial roadway beyond lay cracked and flaking, as if some spell, dredged from the womb of time to hold it firm, were broken. Behind him, the facade of the cavern temple was crumbling, and as he watched, bits of stone fell with a clatter to the doorsill. The tension had drained out of him. He felt at peace. But mingling with his sense of destiny fulfilled was an eagerness to be gone from this foul place, to put the scene and all its memories behind him. Conan rose. The princess scrambled to her feet. "What now?" she asked. "Subutai and I will take you home," he answered gruffly. "Your father will be glad to see you." "My father is dead," said Yasmina. "A messenger from Shadizar arrived but 5 days past to say he'd been slain by Yaro's minions." "Then you are queen and will be needed in Zamora to rule your troubled land." "But what of Yaro? He will not accept me on the throne." "I'll deal with Yaro, never fear. Now it is time to go." "But," the girl persisted, "there are other Towers of Set and other leaders throughout Zamora. What of them?" Conan stood silent, thinking. At last he said, "Many will be broken and deserted, because their purpose died with Thulsa Doom. The cult may long continue here and there, for snakes are hard to kill. The worship of Set may even wax again, but not, I think, within our lifetime." Yasmina raised her anxious eyes to the barbarian's face and smiled. As summer donned the russet dress of autumn, Conan, brave in new garments and bright mail, with a scarlet cloak floating from his shoulders, galloped a black stallion beside Zamora's fields of ripening grain. At length he caught up with the man he followed, a small Hyrcanian riding a shaggy steppe pony. After a brief greeting, they dismounted. "Why did you ride off without a word?" asked Conan. Subutai shrugged. They told me that the Queen had offered you a place beside her on the throne." The small man grinned and added, "I thought you'd be too busy with your, royal duties to have time for an old comrade in arms. Why are you here? I took no more than my fair share of the Queen's reward for the Serpent's Eye. Though why she wanted it, I can't imagine." Conan looked faintly embarrassed. "As I did before I left the city." "You mean you turned the lady's offer down?" Conan grunted. "When I wear a crown, it will be won with my own sword, not given as a dowry." Subutai sighed. "Strange are the ways of Cimmerians. How did you dispose of Yarrow? Would that I had been beside you then, instead of doing my guard duty at the palace." Conan shrugged. "The fighting came to little. When the folk of Shadizar heard that Doom was dead, the Black Priest's followers turned on him. Before I had the chance to sword him, his own people tore him limb from limb." "Whither go you now?" asked Subutai. "South and west. I'm heading for the sea," said Conan. "And what of you?" The Hyrcanian pointed. "North and east, to my homeland. Shall we ever meet again?" Conan grinned. "The world is not wide enough to keep rogues such as us apart for long. We shall meet again, but only Crom knows where and when." "If only at the gates of hell," laughed Subutai. "Ha! Until that day, good fighting." The two friends embraced, slapping each other's shoulders. Then they swung into the saddle. "What's in the west and south that draws you thither?" called Subutai. "Gold, jewels, beautiful women, and fine red wine," roared Conan. Then, with a wave of farewell, they rode away, each towards a different horizon.